Welcome back to season 2 of Beyond Reach. We're so happy that you're here watching with us. Today we have Drury. We're so happy that you're here.
Thanks for having me today.
Of course, man. So I kind of just wanted to start off. How was your day?
It was a great day.
Yeah?
I woke up a little bit earlier than normal, had a cup of coffee, and then I went and took an exam. So that was fun.
How was it?
It was fun. I don't know, I had a good time. So I don't mind taking exams. I have this bad habit where I'll hold my breath taking the exam.
Why?
I get nervous. And I'm like, I need to get in there, take it, and get out of there. So not a good habit. I don't recommend y'all, let me tell you.
So I remember last time we spoke, you were talking about how like you just don't study. Did you study for this one?
No, I didn't.
Come on.
I did the homework. I do my homework, but I didn't like sit down to study for it. I was like, it'll be fine.
Oh, I hope that you took that time to be with people.
Oh yes.
Good.
Absolutely.
I'm glad. I heard you beat Caleb in Madden.
Close. Yeah, it was a good game.
Okay, so I kind of wanted to get into it and address the elephant in the room, but we are wearing suits today. And that is, in case you were wondering, we just wanted to look confident and sharp, which we do. And I feel like we look amazing, don't you agree?
I guess so.
Yeah, we look amazing. So I kind of also wanted to address that you're becoming a leader for Reach, and
Yes,
you're
sir.
taking over for Barry with 2 under wonderful people. How's that been?
You know, it's been
that
a
process.
It's been a big adjustment. Part of doing that has been our main job is to just make sure that Reach is on our mind almost all the time. You know, making sure the parts move, making sure that people have what they need. So my perspective when it comes to the leadership role is less of, do this and here's what we need to do, and more of a role of facilitator. How can I help you get what you desire to be done, finished? How can I support you in your preaching? How can I help you, and how can I help your team execute the night for Reach on a given Sunday? So it's just a lot of thinking, honestly, but it's been a good time.
Nice. So since there is 3 of you, is there divided responsibility, or you're all just working together?
I would say we're mostly working together, but there's a little divided.
Okay.
We're still trying to figure that out. It's still a new kind of relationship we have. I've been overseeing mostly the preacher's aspect of it. So we all work together to pick the preacher list, but I'll try to be a little bit more intentional with reaching out to them before, checking in on them, seeing how they're doing after preaching. So that has been really, really good. I've had a blast doing it.
I'm glad. So I wanted to get into your sermon. I want to talk about it, and I wanted to kind of see what prompted you to speak about changing your posture.
Honestly, I didn't realize I was going to preach on that until a couple weeks after thinking about what my sermon would be about. And so I first thought, hey, I'm going to preach on devotion, the idea of how to spend time with Jesus. Because my perspective is, what do the people of Reach need to hear? And I'm not the biggest, when it comes to my preaching style, the kind of guy to say, do this, accomplish this, behave like this. I'm less interested in that.
Yeah.
What I'm more interested in is what's going on inside your heart and your mind. And so that's why I wanted to do devotion. And so one of my favorite verses when it comes to that is the 2 Corinthians verse I used, where Paul says, I'm concerned because your minds have been led astray from a sincere and pure devotion to Christ.
Right.
And so I opened that verse and I was like, all right, let's study it. But then I read the verses around it and I thought, this is all inclusive. It's not just a sincere and pure devotion to Christ, but it's also other aspects inside their heart. It's also other aspects in their mind that Paul seeks to address. He doesn't just tell them, do this and behave this way. He says, change what's going on inside and see how that changes what goes on outside.
Yeah.
And so I thought, man, maybe that's what Reach needs to hear. Maybe that's what the community of Southern Wesleyan needs to hear, because that's what we're about. You know, we're not exactly about behavior modification. We want heart transformation. And so I just wrestled with, what does this look like? What would this look like in me? And then what would this look like in our community?
Wow. That's powerful.
Thanks, man.
That's very powerful. I love that.
Thank you.
You spoke about in your sermon, you kind of had these 4 points, these 4 H's, I guess. It was holiness, being humble, honesty, and honor.
Yes.
Awesome.
Nice.
Awesome. And I kind of want to go through each one and like you kind of go into detail why you picked those and like the significance of like how that goes into changing your posture.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you we could start off with being humble.
Yeah, that one honestly, even on the stage, I felt a little bit awkward. And
you don't just want to tell people to be humble.
Exactly.
You know?
I was like, I'm not trying to pull Kendrick Lamar, if you heard it. But
sit down.
You know what I'm saying? So
humble.
I was like, how do I want to approach this? And so instead of trying to come up with, hey, here are ways to be humble, I just wanted to look at what the Bible had to say about it. Maybe principles seen throughout the life of Jesus and the life of Paul and how they exemplified what it means to be humble. And so through that, I found out some things. I found out that Paul seemed to love weakness. And to him in his day specifically, that would be so countercultural. In our day, that would be too. To delight in our own weakness, to delight in our own shortcomings, because it makes us rely on Jesus and his strength. I got convicted, and I was wondering, do I do this? So I mentioned in my sermon, I'm legally blind. I don't see well. Am I using that disability as a means to make myself work harder and try to become stronger? Or am I using it as a means to show people Jesus through my own weakness?
Wow.
Because honestly, that's what I want. And so that was the heart behind being humble. It wasn't exactly being the underdog and making sure that everyone looks at me as the most humble man in the world or looks at us as the most humble people in the world. Because I heard somebody say, if you're thinking about how humble you are, you probably aren't humble. It seems like a posture shift.
Right.
It seems like something that people will say about you and you're like, I didn't realize that. How did you see that in me? Because I'm not trying to do that. And I think that truly is something that the Holy Spirit does within us so that we can do with other people. So that was a little bit of the heart behind it. Because I guess living in a society, in a culture specifically where it seems so competition-based. Oh, I'm better than you at this. Oh, basketball, I'll beat you at that. Madden, I'll beat Caleb at that. Sorry, Caleb. But it's like, that's the culture.
Yeah.
So how can we live counter to that? And maybe it is like not relying on being the best in the room. Taylor Swift said it. Taylor Swift said, if you are the smartest person in the room, you're probably in the wrong room. And I love that. I absolutely love that sentiment. I don't want to be the smartest person in the room because then I'm not learning anything. I don't want to be the first person to speak because I'm not learning anything when I'm talking.
Right.
As I'm talking. But you know what I mean.
I understand.
But I think that was a little bit of the heartbeat behind picking humility and seeing Paul's life and how he was like, bear with me in my foolishness. You know, I'm an idiot, bear with me.
All right, so let's move on. Let's go to holiness. Why holiness?
I saw that verse about devotion, and I know that relates to our relationship with Jesus, a sincere and pure devotion in Christ. But I realized that sincerity and purity also revolves around people around us. That I want to be sincere with my friends, that I want to be honest with them, and that I want to be pure with them. I don't want to treat them harshly. But what I loved is that Paul started it in his mind. He said, your minds have been led astray. And so I thought, this seems like holiness because holiness starts in the mind. You know, what are you thinking about? Because as Ben Stewart said, and I said this in my sermon, what you think about is what you care about. What you care about is what you chase.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, I'm less concerned about behavior modification. You know, I'm less concerned about what you do. I really care about what goes on in your head. How do you think of other people when you see them? How do you think of yourself when you look in the mirror? Maybe the most holy thing we can do is change how we think.
Yeah.
So that we can see how we change. So that honestly our behaviors become a result of what's going on in our head. And so that there's not this like dualism between, oh, I think one way and I behave another. But that we don't be led astray from sincere and pure devotion.
Yeah.
And that we pursue that otherness, that set apartness, set apart for something and set apart from something. And maybe through that posture of not trying harder, you know, but drawing closer to the person of Jesus, we might look different. Behaviors might come easier.
What about being honorable? Why?
Honestly, because I'm not good at being honorable. That's not come naturally. I'm like,
Is that like a mercy thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is it a principle thing?
I think it's a principle thing.
Yeah.
You know, like the whole honor your father and mother. It's less about obeying exactly what they say, and it's more about how can I live in a way that you are okay with, that you are happy with. There was this one time I had a little bit of a disagreement with my parents. Yeah. It wasn't anything bad, right? We were disagreeing over whether I should do something. And I asked them, I was like, hey, will this be dishonoring to you? And my dad said, that's up for you to decide. Because he has raised me, and now he wants me to live into how he raised me.
Wow.
And so it's this idea of lifting people up, you know? So if humbling ourselves is delighting in our weakness, what if honoring people is exalting them above ourselves? You know, looking out for the person sitting alone at lunch, to me, is honoring to them.
Yeah.
Not speaking over people, but having a listening ear.
Yeah.
You know, because people want to be heard. People want to talk about themselves. People want to be listened to when it comes to their problems or their happiness. And so I saw that in the text, and I thought, wow, Paul, you're calling the Corinthian church to exalt each other.
Yeah.
When all they're doing is sinning with each other. What would it look like if we did that? You know, what would change on this campus if we try to honor our professors and humanize them? If we try to honor the person we're sitting next to in class and help them, you know? And so I think that was the heartbeat for that one.
I would say it's good to establish a sense of personal virtue,
Yeah.
just so we have a better capacity to love people,
Absolutely.
just in general.
Absolutely, man.
I would definitely say that. And then honesty. I've actually been really excited to hear about why honesty.
So this one came from the verse about the sincere and pure devotion. And I thought, you know what? I don't think that we can grow in our faith in God if we're not being honest with him, if we're not being sincere. Some translations translate that word to honest. And so if that's true of God, is that true of each other? So although holiness, for example, is our relationship with God, it's also our relationship with each other and how we treat each other. I think the same is true with honesty. And so it's like you can't be healed if you're not being honest with the person who's going to heal you. You know, if you go to a doctor and they're like, hey, what hurts? And you tell them your leg hurts even though you're missing an arm. They're not going to be able to heal the missing arm if they're too focused on your leg.
Right.
And although it might sting sometimes, I'm not saying to be rude to each other, but although it might not be the most pleasant thing to hear, honesty could cause a posture shift in our community.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking it is like, if we live in a culture of niceness, right, of just have your way, it's fine. You have a friend group where it's just like everyone is too nervous to contradict each other. There's a lack of honesty. And if there's that niceness culture, there's a fear problem. And so I think that if we were honest with each other, with what we wanted, with how we needed to be helped, with how people could look out for us better, maybe there'd be healing that would happen.
Yeah.
Maybe the culture of fear would dissipate a little bit. Maybe our relationships with Jesus would look different. Because when we get to our Bible, we don't just read it and just nod our heads yes, even if we have no idea what it means. But we're too nervous to admit that.
Right.
But that we'd sit down with a journal and be like, God, I don't understand your word. It is confusing the absolute heck out of me. And maybe he would show up in that honesty. You know?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And so how can you sort of establish and maintain these principles?
You know, I would say none of them come naturally.
Think so?
I don't think so. And I think that what we need to do is set practices that cause us to think about them so that our emotions would shift to wanting them, so that our lives would change to do them. And so if we set up a practice of, for example, honor, in my own life, it's me always trying to pursue asking about them, you know, making them the center of attention.
Yeah.
And so that didn't come naturally at first, honestly. It was, I want to talk about myself. I like talking about myself.
Right.
But setting up that practice and thinking about doing it consistently, and then that turns into a habit. And once it's a habit, I think that I don't have to think about it. It's just the first thing that comes naturally.
Yeah.
And so I think that could be the way, is pinpoint one of these four. I don't think we should do all of them at the same time. Right now, what I'm working on right now is the honesty piece. I'm working on being honest with God and with people. And so setting up rhythms where people keep you accountable. Hey, how have you been with honesty? I had a professor just recently say, hey, I can discreetly, even in the classroom, just be like, Jay, what's going on? In a discreet way. And that's my opportunity to be honest with him. You know?
Yeah.
And it's, maybe I don't want to, it does not come naturally. But maybe as we work out that muscle of honesty, maybe your muscle is the muscle of humility, of honor, or of holiness, that it will become a little bit easier and then your life would look a little bit different. Then you can move to another one.
These seem really important. Just to go over and just to learn. So, Jay, is there any way that I could pray for you today?
You know, if you prepare for the semester,
Yeah.
this first week was tough. So
Yeah.
I'll work on an honesty piece with you. So I preached the first Reach sermon, and so that took a lot of time, took a lot out of me, and I did not do much school. So now I'm playing a little bit of catch up.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely.
I'll be praying for you.
Thank you, Braden.
100%. But yeah, thank you so much for watching and being here, Jay. Thank you so much for being here and talking and
Thank you.
kind of sharing what you spoke about. It was really nice and it was very impactful.
So
We're so happy that you guys came and you're watching. Have a blessed day.